I was 3 sips into a Mai Tai that cost more than my first car when my phone vibrated. It wasn't a polite buzz. It was that frantic, spasms on a tabletop vibration that usually means a server farm in Virginia just caught fire or a junior developer deleted the production database. I stared at the screen. The sun was setting over Maui, painting the sky in shades of bruised purple and arrogant gold, the kind of view people put on postcards to prove they're happy. I wasn't happy. I was exhausted. My bones felt like they were filled with wet cement. This was my first vacation in 3 years. 3 years of 80-hour weeks, 3 years of eating vending machine crackers for dinner, 3 years of keeping a $200 million company afloat with duct tape and caffeine. Before I tell you what the screen said, do us a small favor and hit subscribe honestly. Seeing that number go up is the only thing cheaper than my ex-boss that actually gives me a serotonin boost. Anyway, back to the nightmare. The notification was an email. The subject line was blank. That's usually a bad sign. It's the corporate equivalent of a silence in a dark alley. The sender was Gordon, our CEO. A man whose understanding of cloud infrastructure was limited to knowing that it sounded expensive and lived in the sky. Gordon was the kind of guy who wore Patagonia vests to board meetings and used words like synergy and paradigm shift unironically while cutting the coffee budget to save pennies. I unlocked the phone. The glare of the screen fought the Hawaiian sunset. The email was 2 sentences. Effective immediately, your services are no longer required. Don't bother coming back. I read it once. Then I wipe the condensation from my glass off my thumb and read it again. Then I read it a third time, out loud, to a seagull that was eyeing my garnish. Don't bother coming back. No, thank you for your decade of service. No, we're restructuring. No, here's a generous severance package so you don't burn the building down. Just a digital middle finger sent to a woman who was currently 4,000 miles away from the server room. I felt a numbness spread from my chest to my fingertips. It wasn't sadness. Sadness is what you feel when your dog dies or when they cancel your favorite show. This was a cold, metallic void. It was the feeling of a circuit breaker tripping in a silent house. I thought about the last 3 years. I thought about the night my dad died. I was in the hospital waiting room, laptop open on my knees, migrating our SQL database because Gordon insisted we couldn't afford downtime during business hours. I missed the moment my dad took his last breath because I was troubleshooting a latency issue on the payment gateway. I thought about the Christmas mornings I spent on Zoom calls with offshore teams. I thought about the gray hairs that had colonized my temples like invasive weeds. I was the uptime queen. That's what they called me. When the internet broke, Karen fixed it. When the load balancers choked on Black Friday traffic, Karen rerouted the packets. I was the invisible structural integrity of the entire company, and they just fired me via email while I was wearing a swimsuit. My first instinct was to call HR. But then, I remembered HR was just a department designed to protect the company from lawsuits, not to protect employees from sociopaths. My second instinct was to throw the phone into the Pacific Ocean. But my third instinct was the one that made me good at my job. It was the instinct that analyzed systems, identified vulnerabilities, and executed commands. I took another sip of the Mai Tai. The rum burned pleasantly on its way down. I looked at the email again. Gordon thought he was cutting dead weight. He thought I was just another line item on a spreadsheet, an expensive legacy employee who didn't fit the new vision. What Gordon didn't know, what nobody in that C-suite seemed to remember, was the architecture of the beast they were riding. They thought the cloud was this magical, nebulous thing that just worked. They didn't realize it was a machine built by human hands, my hands, and more importantly, they didn't realize whose name was on the lease. I set the phone down on the little plastic table. The condensation made a ring, a perfect circle. Interesting, I whispered. The seagull squawked. It sounded like a laugh. I opened my laptop. Hotel Wi-Fi was garbage, barely enough to stream a movie, but plenty for what I needed to do. I navigated to the login page for our cloud provider. I typed in my credentials. My fingers moved on muscle memory, a rhythmic dance I'd performed 10,000 times. Access granted. The dashboard loaded. Green lights everywhere. 99.999% uptime. It was a beautiful thing. A symphony of logic and order in a chaotic world. I checked the billing tab, my eyes narrowed. There it was. My personal credit card, my personal email address, my private commercial license. Years ago in the startup days, we didn't have corporate credit lines that could handle the scale we needed. Gordon had told me, just put it on your card, Karen, we'll expense it. It's faster. We need to move fast and break things, so I did. I moved fast. I didn't break things, I built them. Because I was the one who set it up, because I was the one who maintained it, and because legal was too busy huffing their own farts to audit the vendor contracts properly, the entire infrastructure of a $200 million company was technically, legally, and physically mine. They hadn't just fired an employee, they had evicted the landlord. I closed the laptop. The sun was gone now. The ocean was black and restless. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to cry. I was going to finish my drink. And then I was going to wait, because you don't interrupt your enemy when they're making a mistake. You let them pull the pin, you just make sure you're holding the spoon. Gordon wanted me gone, fine, but he was about to learn a very expensive lesson about gravity. When you cut the strings, the puppet doesn't just stop dancing, it collapses. I signaled the waiter. Another one? He asked, looking at my empty glass. Make it a double, I said. I'm celebrating. Oh, what's the occasion? I smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. It was the smile of a predator that just realized the cage door was unlocked. I just got fired, I said, and I think I just became the most powerful woman in the tech industry. The waiter looked confused, but he nodded and walked away. He didn't understand. Nobody did, not yet. But by tomorrow morning, everyone would know. The silence was coming. It was going to be deafening. To understand why a simple email triggered a nuclear meltdown, you have to meet Austin. Austin arrived 2 weeks ago like a bad smell masked by expensive cologne. He was our new COO, brought in to streamline operations and optimize synergy, which is corporate speak for fire the people who do the work and hire my fraternity brothers. Austin was 32, looked 24, and had teeth so white they looked radioactive. He wore those quilted Patagonia vests that scream I work in venture capital, but I've never actually built anything in my life. He walked with that confident bounce of a man who has never been told no, and certainly never had to debug a kernel panic at 3 a.m. on a Sunday. Our first meeting was in the glass-walled conference room we called the Fishbowl. Gordon introduced him as a visionary. I introduced myself as the person who makes sure the visionary's email actually sends. Austin looked at me like I was a smudge on his Gucci loafers. I was wearing my standard uniform, black hoodie jeans, no makeup, hair in a bun held together by a pencil and sheer willpower. I didn't look like a culture fit. I looked like IT, Karen, Austin said, testing the name like it was a cheap wine. Cloud infrastructure lead. That sounds heavy. We really need all that internal overhead? I have some buddies over at Stratosphere Solutions who could probably manage our stack for half the cost. I felt a vein in my forehead throb. Stratosphere Solutions is a glorified reseller, Austin. We have a proprietary architecture. We handle 4 terabytes of throughput per second. Your buddies would melt their servers in 10 minutes. He laughed. A hollow, dry sound. Proprietary usually just means outdated, Karen. We need to be agile. We need to be serverless. We need AI-driven scalability. He was throwing words at me that he'd read in a Forbes article on the toilet. He didn't know what they meant. He just knew they sounded expensive and important. We are serverless where it counts, I said, keeping my voice level. And our scalability is automated based on real-time load metrics. I wrote the scripts myself. Right, he said, waving a hand dismissively. Scripts. That feels very 2015. We need a holistic platform approach. I stopped listening. I knew the type. He was a demolition man disguised as an architect. He didn't want to understand the system. He wanted to pee on it to mark his territory. Over the next week, I saw him lurking. He wasn't doing work. He was snooping. He'd stand behind junior devs, asking invasive questions about vendor costs. How much do we pay AWS? Why is this line item so high? Who authorizes these instances? He was building a case, I knew it. He was looking for fat to trim, and in his eyes I was a marbled steak. I was the highest paid engineer in the department, not because I negotiated well, though I did, but because I was the only one who knew where the digital bodies were buried. One afternoon, I caught him staring at one of my monitoring dashboards. It was a beautiful, sprawling map of our network nodes, pulsating with live traffic data. It looks complicated, he said, not looking at me. It is, I replied. It's the nervous system of the company. Nervous systems can be transplanted, he muttered. I should have known then. I should have seen the knife coming. But I was too busy keeping the lights on. I was too busy handling the migration of our archival data to cold storage so we could save the company, his company, another 10 grand a month. I found out later, through the grapevine of terrified admins, that Austin had ordered a full audit of IT spend the day he started. But he didn't ask for the technical documentation. He asked for the billing contacts. He asked for the org charts. He wasn't analyzing the tech. He was analyzing the headcount. He saw a 45-year-old woman making 6 figures who didn't laugh at his jokes and didn't wear all birds, and he decided I was legacy debt. He convinced Gordon that I was a bottleneck, that I was hoarding information, that I was resistant to change. He probably told them he could replace me with a sleek, outsourced team that would use AI to do my job for pennies. The irony, of course, is that he was right about one thing. I was a bottleneck, but not in the way he thought. I wasn't clogging the pipe. I was the pipe. I was the valve. I was the dam holding back a chaotic flood of data that wanted nothing more than to crash the system. And he had just convinced the village idiot to blow up the dam. Back in Maui, sitting in the dark, I replayed that last conversation with him. You really think you're irreplaceable, don't you, Karen? He had sneered, leaning against my doorframe. Nobody is irreplaceable, Austin, I had said. But some things are load-bearing. You pull them out, the roof comes down. We'll see. He had said, yeah, Austin, we'll see. You wanted to cut costs? You wanted to eliminate the legacy overhead? Well, congratulations. You just saved the company my salary. But you forgot to ask who owned the building before you evicted the tenant. You were so busy looking at the inefficiencies that you didn't check the deed. I opened a new tab on my laptop. I pulled up the audit logs for the last 2 weeks. There it was. User, Austin COO accessing the billing summary. User, Gordon CEO approving a request titled IT Restructuring Plan. They had planned this while I was booking my flight. They waited until I was over the Pacific Ocean to pull the trigger, thinking I'd be too distracted by the aloha spirit to fight back. They thought I'd just fade away, embarrassed and defeated. They clearly didn't know that I run on spite and caffeine, and I was all out of caffeine. The morning after the email, I woke up with a headache that felt like a pickaxe in my frontal lobe. For a split second, the muscle memory of panic kicked in. I need to check the logs, did the nightly backup run, before the reality slammed into me. I didn't have to check the logs, not my circus, not my monkeys, but curiosity is a disease and I was terminal. I sat up in the hotel bed, surrounded by an armada of empty minibar bottles, and reached for my laptop. I tried to log into my corporate email first, just to see. Account disabled, contact administrator. I tried Slack. You have been signed out of this workspace. I tried the VPN. Authentication failed. It was thorough, efficient. Austin had clearly given the order to the sysadmin team, my team, the kids I had hired and trained, to scrub me from existence the moment the email was sent. I could picture it. Kevin, my senior dev, probably typing the command with shaking hands, wondering if he was next. Sarah, the security analyst, probably crying in the break room because I was the only one who defended her when Austin made creepy comments about her energy. I tried calling my assistant David, straight to voicemail. You've reached David at Cloud Corp. They had ghosted me. A decade of work, of late nights, of saved disasters, and I was being treated like a rogue element, a security threat. It stung, I won't lie. It felt like walking into your own house and finding the locks changed and your family staring at you through the window like they've never seen you before. But then, the cold logic returned. They had locked the front door. They had boarded up the windows, but they forgot that the ground the house stood on belonged to me. I opened a private browser window. I typed in the URL for the AWS Management Console, not the corporate SSO login that routed through their identity provider. That was definitely dead. I went to the root login, the master key, username, KarenCloudArchitect@gmail.com password, redacted MFA code, entered from my personal phone. I held my breath. If they were smart, if Austin was even 10% as competent as his LinkedIn profile claimed, they would have seized this account first. They would have legally forced a transfer. They would have threatened me with a lawsuit to get the keys before firing me. Welcome to AWS Console. The dashboard loaded. I let out a laugh that sounded like a bark. They hadn't touched it. They hadn't even looked at it. To Austin, the cloud was just a utility bill. He didn't understand that accounts are tied to legal entities. When we started, the company credit card was maxed out buying Herman Miller chairs for the founders. I had used my personal Amex Platinum to spin up the initial clusters. I had registered the domain names. I had set up the root credentials. Over the years, I had tried to transfer it. I sent emails to legal. Hey, we need to migrate the root account ownership to a corporate entity for liability reasons. Legal's response: we're currently reviewing the liability implications of asset transfer. Let's circle back in Q3. That was 4 years ago. I sent emails to finance. Please update the billing to the corporate card. Finance's response: the corporate card has a spending limit that triggers a fraud alert with AWS recurring charges. Just keep expensing it, Karen. It's easier for the audit trail. Laziness, incompetence, bureaucracy. They had woven a rope of red tape, and now they had hanged themselves with it. I looked at the screen. The entire digital footprint of the company was right there. Production databases, the client portals, the source code repositories, the backup archives. I could see the real-time metrics. CPU usage was spiking, probably the morning login rush. The auto-scaling groups were spinning up new instances. The system was breathing, and I was holding the oxygen tube. I clicked on the billing tab. Current month-to-date balance, $42,308.12. Payment method, Karen's personal Amex. They fired me, but they were still charging lunch to my credit card. The audacity was almost impressive. I opened a terminal window on my laptop. I still had my SSH keys. They were hard-coded into the Bastion hosts because, again, I was the one who set up the security groups, and I needed emergency access that bypassed the corporate SSO in case the identity server went down. SSHI Karen root PEM EC2 user at production Bastion connected. I was in. I was inside the network. I was a ghost in the machine. I could see the active sessions. I saw Kevin's username logged into a database replica. I saw Sarah running a vulnerability scan. They were working, oblivious to the fact that their boss was hovering above them like a vengeful god. I typed a simple command. Who am I? Root. The word stared back at me. Root, the base, the source. The absolute power. I wasn't an employee anymore. I was a hostile external entity with administrative privileges. I sipped my lukewarm coffee. I could burn it all down right now. rm/rf/. The classic delete everything command. I could wipe the databases. I could encrypt the backups and throw away the key. It would take them months to recover if they ever did. But that was too crude. That was criminal. That would get me sued, maybe arrested. I didn't want to be a criminal. I wanted to be a lesson. I wanted them to feel the silence. I didn't want to break the window. I wanted to turn off the air. I navigated to the Identity and Access Management (EAM) dashboard. This is where permissions are controlled. This is where you decide who is allowed to touch what. I saw the role Austin COO audit. It had read-only access to everything. I smirked. I clicked edit. Then I looked at the master service control policies. These are the rules that govern the entire organization. I opened a new text file on my desktop and started drafting a plan. Step 1, revoke the license. Step 2, silence the alarms. Step 3, the blackout. I wasn't going to hack them. I was just going to stop paying the bill. I was going to retrieve my property. I picked up my phone and called American Express. "Hi," I said to the automated voice. "I need to report a lost card. Please cancel my current number immediately and issue a new one." "Certainly," the robot said. "Your current card has been deactivated. Step 1 complete." The next time AWS tried to charge my card, which, based on the billing cycle, was tomorrow, the payment would fail. But AWS gives you a grace period. They don't shut you down immediately for a failed payment. I didn't want a grace period. I wanted immediate results. So I went back to the console. I found the organization settings, the button that said leave organization. If the root account leaves the organization, the child accounts, the ones running the actual servers, get orphaned. They lose their billing anchor. But that was too messy. Instead, I looked at the API keys, the little strings of code that let the company's applications talk to the cloud. I selected all active keys. My mouse hovered over the button that said deactivate. Not yet. I needed them to feel safe for one more day. I needed Austin to give his big new direction speech. I checked the company calendar. I still had the synced copy on my phone. Town Hall meeting, the future of Cloud Corp. Tomorrow, 10 o'clock a.m. PST. Perfect. I closed the laptop. I was going to enjoy my day at the beach. I was going to snorkel with turtles. I was going to eat fresh poke. And tomorrow at 10:01 a.m., I was going to turn off the sun. The next morning, Maui was disgustingly beautiful. The ocean was a sheet of turquoise glass. The air smelled of plumeria and expensive sunscreen. I sat on my balcony, wearing a bathrobe and sunglasses, looking like a retired villain from a Bond movie. My laptop was open on the patio table next to a pot of Kona coffee. It was 9:55 a.m. in Oregon. The town hall was about to start. I didn't have access to the Zoom link anymore, obviously. But I didn't need it. I had something better. I had Twitter. And I had the internal chat logs of the DevOps team, which I was currently tailing via a backdoor shell I'd left open on a forgotten staging server. I could see the chatter scrolling by in green text on a black background. "Kevin Dev, you guys seeing this lag on the auth server? Sarah Sec. Yeah, latency is creeping up. Is Karen around? Kevin Dev, dude. Didn't you hear she's gone? Sarah Sec, what when? Kevin Dev, Austin fired her yesterday via email. Sarah Sec, Jesus, who's running the migration? Kevin Dev, we are. I took a sip of coffee. Poor kids, they were about to learn trial by fire. 10 o'clock a.m. The town hall was starting. Austin would be on stage now, flashing those veneers, talking about lean operations and trimming the fat. He was probably making a joke about how easy it is to manage the cloud in 2024. "It's all automated," he'd say. "It runs itself." I minimized the chat and brought up the AWS console. I navigated to CloudWatch, the monitoring service. This is the dashboard that tells the engineers if the system is healthy. It's the eyes of the ship. I selected the main dashboard group. Action, delete. Are you sure? I clicked yes. Instantly in the DevOps chat, panic flared. Kevin Dev, guys, my dashboard just went blank. Sarah Sec, mine too, says resource not found. New guy Steve, is the internet down? Kevin Dev, no, Slack is working, the monitors are gone. The widgets are just deleting themselves. I smiled. Step 1, blind the enemy. They couldn't see the traffic spikes. They couldn't see the error rates. They were flying a 747 in a thunderstorm, and I just covered the windshield with duct tape. Now for the engines. I navigated to the API gateway. This is the front door for all mobile apps and web clients. Every time a customer tries to log in, check their balance, or upload a file, it goes through here. I selected the production stage. I looked at the throttling settings. Currently set to 10,000 requests per second. I changed it to 0. Update configuration. The loading spinner spun for 3 seconds, then success. I switched back to the chat logs. Took exactly 12 seconds. Support bot, alert, ticket volume spiking. 50 new tickets in 10 seconds. Kevin Dev, I'm getting 503 errors on the login page. Sarah Sec, the app is dead, I can't log in. New guy Steve, what do we do? Who knows how to revert the API config? Kevin Dev, that was Karen's domain. I don't even have right access to that gateway. Chaos, pure, unadulterated entropy. I opened Twitter. I searched for Cloud Corp. At Angry User 123, is it Cloud Corp down? App keeps crashing. At TechCruncher, reports surfacing of major outage at Cloud Corp. Timing coincides with rumored executive shakeup. At CryptoBro99 at Cloud Corp rug pull, my assets are frozen. I checked the time. 10:15 a.m. Austin was probably just getting to the part of his speech about unmatched reliability. Suddenly, my personal cell phone buzzed. It wasn't a notification. It was a call. I looked at the ID. Gordon, I let it ring. It stopped. Then it rang again immediately. I let it ring. Then a text came through. Gordon, Karen, are you seeing this? System is down. Need you to hop on a call ASAP. I laughed out loud. The seagull was back, watching me. He thinks I work for him, I told the bird. I didn't reply. I just watched the chat logs accelerate. Kevin Dev, Austin just ran out of the conference room. He looks like he's gonna puke. Sarah Sek, the CTO, is screaming at me asking why the rollback isn't working. Kevin Dev, tell him we don't have permissions. The rollback script runs on the Jenkins server, and the Jenkins server can't talk to the repo because the keys are dead. They were figuring it out. Slowly. They were realizing that the fat they trimmed was actually the muscle, the bone, and the brain. I decided to turn the screw one more time. I went to the RDS database console. I didn't delete the data, I'm not a monster. But I did modify the security group, the virtual firewall. I removed the rule that allowed the web servers to talk to the database. Effectively, I just cut the phone line between the brain and the memory. The application wasn't just down now, it was lobotomized. Another text from Gordon. Gordon, Karen, pick up. This is an emergency. We will pay your consulting rate. I took a slow sip of coffee. Consulting rate? Oh, Gordon, we are way past consulting rates. We are in the realm of you insulted my ancestors' rates. I typed a reply but didn't send it yet. Who is this? No, too petty. I watched the stock ticker for Cloud Corp. It was a private company, but the investors watched the uptime like hawks. I knew the VC firms had automated alerts. Their phones were blowing up right now, too. Austin's little audit had just cost them more in 20 minutes than my salary for the next 10 years. I leaned back. The sun was getting hot. The breeze was perfect. I had fired the first shot. The blindness, the silence, the panic, but I wasn't done. I had to make sure they understood why this was happening. I had to make sure they knew this wasn't a glitch. This was an eviction. I opened my email client, my personal one. I found the thread from 3 years ago where I warned them about the account ownership. The one where legal said, it's fine for now. I forwarded it to Gordon, Austin, and the entire board of directors. Subject, don't bother coming back body. Per your instruction, I have ceased all work. Since the cloud infrastructure is registered to my personal commercial entity and you have terminated our relationship, I am currently decommissioning my personal assets to avoid incurring further costs on my credit card. Good luck with the synergy. Send. I closed the laptop. Now we wait for the explosion. While the digital world burned down around them, I ordered breakfast. Avocado toast with poached eggs because I'm a millennial cliché and also because I could afford it. You're probably wondering, Karen, isn't this illegal? Isn't this extortion? Let me clarify something for the armchair lawyers in the comments. If I had hacked into their system, yes, I'd be going to federal prison. But I didn't hack their system. I simply stopped letting them borrow mine. See, the legacy trap is a common phenomenon in tech startups that grow too fast. In the beginning, you do whatever it takes. You put servers on your credit card. You register domains under your personal GoDaddy account because the corporate card is maxed out. You write the code on your personal laptop because the company hasn't bought you one yet. Most companies fix this when they hit series of funding. They audit, they transfer, they clean up. But Gordon was cheap and Austin was arrogant. 3 years ago, I sent a memo. I remember writing it. It was titled Critical Infrastructure Asset Transfer. I outlined that the entire AWS organization, the GitHub repositories, and the DNS records were legally property of Karen Smith Consulting LLC, a shell I set up for tax reasons. I urged them to transfer it to Cloud Corp Inc. I remember the meeting. Gordon looked at the transfer fees, AWS charges for support plan changes, and reserved instance transfers. It would have cost about $15,000 in administrative overhead and overlapping billing cycles. $15,000? Gordon had scoffed, spitting crumbs of a muffin on the table. Just leave it, Karen. We have an implied license. We'll fix it when we IPO. Implied license is a legal term that means we're too lazy to do paperwork. I warned legal. Their general counsel, a guy named Brad who spent more time golfing than lawyering, told me as long as we pay the bill, it's fine. Don't be a bureaucrat, Karen. So I became the bank. Every month. AWS charged my Amex $40,000 plus. I submitted an expense report. Cloud Corp reimbursed me. Technically, I was a reseller. I was a service provider. And my client, Cloud Corp, just fired me without cause and without a contract termination clause. So, when I turned off the sky, I wasn't sabotaging their company. I was terminating service for a non-paying customer who had just been abusive to the vendor. I pulled up the receipts on my phone. I had a folder named CYA Cover Your Ass. It contained every email, every Slack message, every signed document where they acknowledged that I owned the account. I looked at the forwarded email I had just sent to the board. My phone rang again. This time it wasn't Gordon. It was Brad, the general counsel. I answered. Karen? His voice was tight, high-pitched. He sounded like he was being strangled by his own tie. Hi, Brad. How's the golf swing? Karen, turn it back on. Now, we can discuss a severance package, but you cannot hold the company hostage. This is a violation of the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act. Actually, Brad, I said, cutting into my egg yolk, it's not. I'm the account holder. My name is on the invoice. My social security number is attached to the tax ID. You guys fired me, which means you terminated the implied contract between Cloud Corp and Karen Smith Consulting. I'm just mitigating my damages. I can't afford a $40,000 bill next month if I'm unemployed. We will sue you into the ground, he hissed. You can try, I said calmly. But discovery will be fun. I have the email from 2021 where you specifically declined the asset transfer to save money. I have the email from yesterday where Gordon fired me with zero notice. And right now, I have the root credentials. If you sue me, I might just decide that my company needs to pivot and delete the data to make room for new projects. Silence. Long, heavy silence. What do you want? Brad asked. The fight was leaving him. He knew I had them. He knew that even if they won a lawsuit in 2 years, the company would be dead in 2 days without the data. I don't want to talk to you, Brad, I said. And I don't want to talk to Gordon, I want to talk to the board. The board is in an emergency meeting, he said. Good, tell them to check their email. And tell Austin? I paused. Tell Austin that legacy debt collects interest. I hung up. I checked the timestamp. It had been 45 minutes since the outage began. The losses were probably hitting the $1 million mark. Customers were churning. Data was stagnant. I felt a twinge of guilt about the customers, the innocent businesses relying on our platform. But then I remembered the way Austin looked at me when he said, "Do we really need all that overhead?" Yes, Austin, you do. And right now the overhead is standing over your grave. I finished my breakfast. The adrenaline was starting to fade, replaced by a cold, hard resolve. This wasn't a game anymore. This was a negotiation. And I held the only currency that mattered. By 11 o'clock a.m., the situation had shifted from technical difficulty to existential threat. My phone was vibrating so constantly it was sliding across the table on its own. Calls from Gordon, calls from Brad, calls from numbers I didn't recognize, probably board members. I ignored them all. Then a text came in from Marcus. Marcus was the CTO. He was a decent guy, actually. A bit spineless. The kind of leader who let Austin steamroll him because he avoided conflict, but he respected the tech. He had been at a conference in London, which is why he hadn't been part of the ambush yesterday. He must have just landed and turned his phone on to the apocalypse. Marcus, Karen, I just landed. The dashboard is red. Everyone is screaming. Kevin says he can't access the route. What is going on? I felt a pang of sympathy. Marcus didn't deserve this. He had let the fox into the henhouse when he hired Austin. He was complicit by negligence. Marcus, please. Gordon says you went rogue. He says you hacked us. I told him that's impossible. You're the most ethical engineer we have. Talk to me. I stared at the screen. Ethical. That was the trap. They relied on my ethics to cover for their greed. They assumed I would never let the system fail because I loved it too much. They weaponized my professionalism against me. I typed a reply. Me. I didn't hack anything, Marcus. I just took my keys back. Marcus, keys? What keys? Me, the AWS root keys. The ones registered to my personal email. The ones I asked you to transfer 3 years ago, remember? 3 bubbles appeared. He was typing, then stopped, then typing again. Marcus, oh my god, you own the infra. Me, bingo. Marcus, Karen, Gordon is an idiot. Austin is a fraud, I know that, but we have clients. We have hospitals using our data archives. You have to turn it back on. Hospitals, that was a low blow. We did have a few healthcare clients, but their critical systems were on-prem. We just handled their cold storage backups. Nobody was dying, but Marcus knew how to hit my conscience. Me, I can't, Marcus. I'm not an employee. I have no authorization to operate Cloud Corp systems. That would be a liability. Marcus, stop IT. This isn't a joke. Why is the cloud inaccessible? And there it was, the question, the panic. The realization that the invisible thing they took for granted was gone. I typed the line I had been holding in my chest for 24 hours. Me, because you fired the sky. I hit send. I watched the read receipt appear instantly. You fired the sky. It was dramatic, maybe a little over the top, but it was true. They thought the cloud was just there like air. They didn't realize it was a service I provided. Structure I upheld. 10 seconds later, Marcus called. I answered this time. Karen, he breathed. He sounded like he was running through an airport. I'm firing Austin. Right now, I'm calling the board. I'm telling them everything. Just, please, give us the keys. It's not that simple, Marcus, I said, my voice steady. I don't trust you anymore. You let a guy in a fleece vest dismantle my team. You let him fire me while I was on vacation. The trust is gone. The contract is void. What do you want? He begged. Name your price. Double salary? Equity? We can overwrite, Gordon. The board is terrified. I don't want a job, I said. I want a buyout. A buyout? I own the infrastructure, I said. If you want it back, you have to buy it from me. Karen Smith Consulting LLC is open to acquisition offers, but the price just went up. How much? $5 million, I said, cash. Plus full vesting of my original stock options that you guys tried to cancel. $5 million? That's extortion? No, Marcus. Extortion is threatening to release your browser history. This is business. You want to buy a fully operational, enterprise-grade cloud architecture with 99.999% uptime history. That's the market rate. Actually, it's a discount. Building it from scratch would cost you 20 million and take 2 years. He was silent. You knew I was right. I'll take it to the board, he whispered. You do that, I said, and Marcus, tell Austin to update his LinkedIn. I hear unemployed is trending. I hung up. I was shaking a little. 5 million, it was a crazy number, but they were losing that much in market valuation every hour. I went back to the Twitter feed. The hashtag #CloudCorp down was trending. Tech blogs were running live updates. Breaking, Cloud Corp outage enters hour 3. Insider reports suggest catastrophic leadership failure. I refreshed the page. Update, leaked internal emails suggest the entire infrastructure was owned by a rogue employee who was wrongfully terminated. Someone leaked my email, probably Kevin. Good boy, Kevin, the narrative was shifting. I wasn't the villain anymore. I was the martyr. The symbol of every overworked, underappreciated tech worker who held the world on their shoulders while the executives played golf. I poured another cup of coffee. It was cold, but I drank it anyway. The taste of victory is sweet enough to mask the bitterness. At 1 p.m., my phone rang. It was a conference line. The area code was Delaware Legal HQ. I put it on speaker and set it on the table next to my half-eaten lunch. This is Karen, I said, crunching into a macadamia nut. Karen, this is Jonathan Sterling, a deep, gravelly voice said, the chairman of the board, the money man. You have the full board on the line, along with Gordon and Marcus. Hi, Jonathan, long time. Remember the Christmas party where you asked me to fix your wife's iPad? Good times. Karen Sterling cut in, his voice tight. Let's cut the pleasantries. We have a crisis. We understand there is a dispute regarding the ownership of the AWS root credentials. There's no dispute, Jonathan, I said. I have the receipts. You have the outage. It's pretty clear. You're prepared to offer you reinstatement, Sterling said, sounding like he was swallowing broken glass. With a 20% raise, and we will address the management issues that led to this. Address? I laughed. You mean Austin? Is he on the line? Hey, Austin, how's the audit going? Find any more efficiencies? Silence. I could hear someone breathing heavily, probably Austin hyperventilating. I'm not coming back, Jonathan, I said. That bridge is burned. You salted the earth when you fired me via email during my PTO. I don't work for people who treat me like disposable hardware. Then we will accept your offer, Sterling said quickly. The buyout, 5 million, we will wire it today. Just give us the keys. He folded too fast. That was my first clue. Men like Sterling don't write $5 million checks without a fight unless they are truly, deeply desperate, or unless they're lying. Draft the contract. I said send it to my personal email. Once the funds clear in my LLC's account, I will transfer the credentials. We need access now, Karen, Gordon interrupted. His voice was shaky. The investors are pulling out. We need the lights on now. Funds clear first, I said. That's how commerce works, Gordon. You don't get the groceries until you pay the cashier. We can't wait for a wire transfer to clear. Gordon shouted. That takes 24 hours. Should have thought of that before you fired the account holder, I said. Karen, Marcus said, his voice soft. Please, for the team, Kevin is crying. They've been up since 4 a.m. trying to rebuild from scraps. Just turn on the read access. Let us see the data. I hesitated, not because I trusted them, but because I checked my other email account, the one on my phone that didn't belong to Cloud Corp or Karen Smith Consulting. I had an email from Vertex Systems, their biggest competitor. Subject, offer letter. I had been talking to Vertex for months, casually. Their CTO, Alina, was a friend. She knew I was unhappy. When she saw the news break this morning, she didn't just send condolences. She sent a PDF. I opened it while the board breathed heavy on the line. Position, VP of Cloud Architecture. Salary, double my current package. Signing bonus, $500K. Equity, substantial. But the kicker was the text message Alina sent me separately. Alina, hold the line. We're preparing a hostile bid for Cloud Corp. If their stock tanks another 10%, we can buy them for parts. We want you to run the integration. I smiled. The game had changed. I wasn't just selling the keys, I was selling the castle. Karen, Sterling asked. Are you there? I'm here, I said. I'm thinking. We will wire $100,000 immediately as a good faith payment. Sterling offered. Just turn on the servers. No, I said. Here's the new deal. I'm going to hang up. You're going to send the contract for the full 5 million, and while you're doing that, I suggest you check the news wire. What? Why? Because I said I think you have bigger problems than me. I hung up. I didn't have to wait long. 5 minutes later, the notification popped up on my screen. Breaking, Vertex Systems announces tender offer to acquire struggling Cloud Corp at $12 per share, a 40% discount from yesterday's valuation. The board meeting I just left must have turned into a bloodbath. They weren't just fighting me anymore. They were fighting for their existence. And I held the ace. If Vertex bought Cloud Corp, I wouldn't need to sell the keys to Sterling. I'd be giving them to Alina, my new boss. I texted Alina, they're on the ropes. Finish them? Alina replied, offer sent to board. We explicitly listed resolution of infrastructure liabilities as a condition of closing. That means you. I leaned back. The sun was setting again. It had been 36 hours. I had destroyed a company, secured a massive payday, and lined up a promotion, all while wearing a bathrobe. But there was one loose end. Austin. I wanted him to know it was me. not just the rogue employee, but the specific woman he underestimated. I opened my laptop again. I still had root access. The system was still down for the world, but I could still push a message to the internal splash page, the one the employees saw when they tried to log in. I typed a simple HTML file. H1 error 404, competence not found /H1P please contact Austin for support. He knows a guy at Stratosphere Solutions. /P I pushed the update. Petty? Yes. Professional? No. Satisfying? Orgasmic. The next 12 hours were a blur of lawyers, DocuSigns, and vindication. Cloud Corp rejected the buyout offer from Vertex initially. Hubris is a hell of a drug. They thought they could still salvage it. They thought they could bully me into submission. Brad sent a cease and desist. I replied with a screenshot of the AWS terminate account button. He went silent. Gordon went on CNBC to try and calm the markets. He looked like he hadn't slept in a week. He stammered something about a vendor dispute and legacy anomalies. The anchor asked him, "Is it true that a single employee owns your entire cloud stack?" Gordon froze. He blinked. "It's a complex legal situation." The stock tanked another 15% before the commercial break. That's when Alina called me. "They're folding," she said. Her voice was crisp, professional. Triumphant, "Sterling just called our CEO. They're accepting the acquisition offer. $10 a share. It's a fire sale." "Congratulations," I said. "You just bought a lemon." "No," Alina said. "We bought the customer list. And we bought the IP, the infrastructure. Well, we have our own. We just need to migrate the data. And lucky for us, we just hired the person who has the keys." I felt a genuine smile spread across my face. "So, I'm hired." "The offer letter is in your inbox," Alina said. "VP of Infrastructure. You report directly to me. No Austins, no Gordons, and Karen, we pay for the AWS accounts on the corporate card. From day one." "Deal," I said. "One condition," Alina added. "We need the Cloud Corp system back online by tomorrow morning. We can't announce the acquisition if the product is dead. It scares the clients." "Consider it done," I said. "But I want to do it my way. As long as it's green by 9 a.m., I don't care how you do it." I hung up and opened the Vertex offer letter. It was beautiful. A signing bonus that wiped out my mortgage. Stock options in a stable, competent company, and a title that commanded respect. I signed it digitally. Then I drafted one last email to the Cloud Corp board. To Board of Directors CC, Gordon, Austin, Brad from Karen Smith, VP. Vertex Systems, subject. Resolution: as you are aware, Vertex Systems has acquired Cloud Corp. As the new VP of Infrastructure for Vertex, I am authorized to assume control of all legacy assets. I will be restoring service shortly. Regarding the $5 million buyout we discussed, since Vertex now owns you, that point is moot. However, I have attached an invoice for $42,308.12 for this month's AWS bill. Please remit payment to my personal Amex immediately. Austin, I suggest you back up your emails locally. I'll be wiping the executive mail servers first as part of the security audit. I hit send. I imagined the room where they were reading it. The silence. The realization that not only had they lost the company, but the woman they fired was now coming back as their conqueror. I logged back into the AWS console. I went to the API gateway. I set the throttling limits back to 10,000. I went to the CloudWatch dashboard. I restored the widgets. I went to the security groups. I re-enabled the database connections. It took 5 minutes. Slowly, the graphs started to populate. The red lines turned green. The error rate dropped to 0. The heartbeat returned. I watched the traffic spike as users flooded back in. It was working. The sky was back on, but it wasn't their sky anymore. It was mine, and now it was Vertex's. I closed the laptop. I was done. I walked down to the beach. The stars were out. The ocean was loud. I felt lighter than I had in 20 years. They fired me to save money. In the end, it cost them everything. 2 days later, I was back in Oregon. Not at the Cloud Corp office. That place smelled of fear and packed boxes, but at the Vertex headquarters across town. It was a glass tower that actually looked like it was built in this century. There was a joint press conference scheduled. The acquisition was official. I wasn't supposed to be on stage. I was just the VP of Infra. But Alina insisted. "You're the face of the merge," she said. "Plus, the internet loves you." Karen was right is still trending. We watched from the wings as Gordon took the podium. He looked 10 years older. He read from a prepared statement, his voice devoid of that arrogant visionary spark. "We believe this merger represents the best path forward for our stakeholders," he mumbled. Then the Vertex CEO took the mic. He was a sharp, no-nonsense guy. He thanked Gordon in that dismissive way you thank a waiter who spilled soup on you, and then he invited the new leadership team on stage. "And leading our combined infrastructure strategy," he said. Karen Smith. I walked out. The flashbulbs popped. I saw Gordon flinch. I saw Austin standing in the back of the room near the exit sign. He wasn't wearing his Patagonia vest. He was wearing a wrinkly suit. He looked small. I took the mic. I didn't have a speech prepared. I didn't need one. "Technological debt," I said into the silence, "is real. But the most expensive debt a company can accrue is human debt. And you treat your foundational people like outdated hardware, you don't just lose efficiency. You lose your foundation. I looked directly at Austin. He looked down at his shoes. Cloud Corp fell because it forgot who held up the sky, I said. At Vertex, we build weatherproof roofs. There was applause. It was polite corporate applause, but from the back, I saw the dev ops team, Kevin, Sarah, the whole crew who had been hired by Vertex as part of the deal, cheering wildly. Kevin pumped a fist in the air. After the conference, Gordon tried to approach me. Karen, he said, putting on a fake smile. No hard feelings, right? It's just business. I looked at him. I thought about the funeral I missed. I thought about the years of stress. It wasn't business, Gordon, I said. Business involves paying your bills. You were just a squatter. I walked past him. Security was already escorting Austin out of the building. I heard him arguing about his severance. I have a contract, he was shouting. Read the fine print, I called out to him. Legacy clauses are a bitch. I went up to my new office. It had a view of the river. It had a real espresso machine. And most importantly, it had a team that respected me. I sat down at my desk. My new laptop was waiting. A company-issued MacBook Pro. I logged in. Username, Karen Smith at VertexCom access level. Administrator, I opened a terminal. I typed uptime. System up, 2 hours, 14 minutes. It was a fresh start. I pulled a small bottle of sriracha out of my bag, my one concession to chaos, and put it on my desk next to a framed picture of Danny DeVito. Don't ask, it keeps me grounded. I took a sip of my coffee. They tried to delete me. Instead, they just rebooted me with better specs. I put my headphones on. I played the sound of rain. The sky was clear. The forecast was excellent. And if anyone ever tried to fire me again, well, let's just say I made sure the kill switch on the new system was even harder to find. Funny how some people forget who built the system they depend on until it's gone. Karen didn't scream or beg, she just let silence speak for her. In the end, it wasn't revenge. It was accountability, delivered in code and calm. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next story.